Now, if you've ever opened up Ableton Live and seen this, or if your CPU meter is constantly maxed out, you're not alone. Ableton Live is an amazing piece of software, but when you're starting out, it's quite easy to make a lot of mistakes. And some of these mistakes can make Ableton Live unusable. So today, I'm here to help. I'm going to break down the 10 most common mistakes I see new Ableton Live users make day in, day out. Most importantly, I'm going to show you how to fix these mistakes so you can make music faster without the headaches. Let's go. So the first mistake, and probably the most common one I see happen all the time, is not doing collect all and save correctly. I see students lose music all the time because of this, and I myself lost a whole EP because I didn't save it correctly. So do not skip this one. Let's go. Say you've downloaded a new sample pack like this one here, my free sample pack, which you can get in the link above, and also it's in the description below, and you're super excited to make some music. You drag in some loops like Bosch, there's that one, let's go this one, let's get in a kick drum as well. I'm ready to save it. Just like any other normal program, we go File, Save Live Set, name it, new tune, save. Job done. No. Now, here's the problem. Say one day you go to your downloads folder and you have a bit of a spring clean and you go, oh, well, that folder with all the samples there, I've dragged that into Ableton, so they all live inside Ableton Live, right? Wrong. So I demonstrate this for you, delete it, move to bin. Uh-oh, if I press play, no sound. We have this dreaded media files are missing. Click to learn more. If we click to learn more, oh my God, they're missing. Because when you drag audio files into Ableton Live, like I just did, they don't directly copy. What Ableton Live does is it creates a shortcut to where it's saved on the hard drive, for example, my downloads folder, and then references it every time it opens up. Now, if I took this project and put it onto another computer, you would get this. If you emailed it to your friend, you would get this. To avoid this, you need to do a certain kind of save. You would need to do collect all and save. That would essentially duplicate the files, scoop them up, and put them into the Ableton project folder that you saved. So first, let's look at how you would fix getting your samples back. To get these files back, you will need to re-download your folder or transfer your folder or put the files back on your computer somewhere. Now, if you put it in the exact same place where you copied it from, for example, the downloads folder, it will automatically relink them. Now that I've put it back, if it's in the same place, it automatically finds it. If you, however, do not do that, you can just go automatic search, go, and it will search your whole computer and find them for you. Now, when we go here, we go File, Collect All and Save. It will ask files from elsewhere, files from other projects, user library, and files from factory packs. You can just select them all to be safe. Okay, now do you see that scanned a little bit? That is scooped up and put it in the new tune project folder. To double check this, go to where you saved your project, and within the folder, once you've done a collect all and save, a new folder will appear called samples, and there'll be your samples imported. Super important one, that. Please don't lose music. Mistake number 2, I think, is a little bit less important than the first one, but still very important, is setting up your preferences. I see it all the time, students getting no sound out of Ableton Live, latency, or their CPU meters maxing out. These things are easily cured by just adjusting a few preferences in Ableton Live. So let's look at how we do that. First thing, you want to use the shortcut Command, on a Mac or Control, on Windows. Then we want to go to the audio tab here and just ensure you have selected the correct output device. The output device is essentially where are you going to listen to Ableton Live from. So if you have headphones plugged into your computer, that'd be your external headphone out. If you listen to it through the speakers, if you have an audio interface like me, you would go and select your audio interface. Now I'm using a piece of software that's capturing this screen, so I have to send the audio out through there. Then if you were recording audio in, this is where you would select where Ableton Live is going to receive audio into. So that should sort out how you hear sound. Just to test it, what you can do is turn this test tone thing on here, and you should be able to hear it. Next thing is your sample rate. Ensure that you either have the default 44-100 set or 48,000. I usually use 48,000. I just think it sounds a little bit better. Great, so there's 2 really good mistakes fixed for you. Let's look at the third mistake, which is choosing the correct warp mode. So for those of you who don't know, warping is Ableton Live's automatic time stretching algorithm. So whenever I drag in a sample like this one here, if I click here, you'll see it has like a little thing at the top here, and this thing here is called warp. Underneath it, you have different warping algorithms, and they affect the music in different ways. Just a general rule, when you're starting out, you want to have any percussive stuff, like say, for example, these drums here, you want to set that to beats, which beats is the default. You can change this in the settings, and if you would like to know a bit more about all the different settings, I recommend setting up in Ableton Live. Have another video on that here and down below. Check that out. But beats for drums, because what beats does is it aims to preserve the transients. So when you speed and slow things up, it's not going to like stretch that transient and make it sound mushy and less punchy. It's going to always keep the initial hit intact. Now that becomes a little less desirable when we work with things like vocals. Let me show you. I'm going to grab a vocal. So I'm going to put my headphones on for this one. So I have a vocal here. I'm going to warp it, and I'm going to put it on beats to start off with. And then I'm going to slow the tempo right down and see if you can hear the weirdness to it.
Standing in the rain, feather down in my brain. I was doing some silly thing just to make you look at me.
Can you hear that almost like stutter effect? That's basically the beats algorithm there is preserving the transient and then kind of stretching or smearing the rest of the audio, which can sound a bit weird on vocals. So if we put this to complex, check this out.
Standing in the rain, feather down in my brain. I was doing silly.
Much less glitchy. Just as a loose rule, when you're starting out with warping audio, you want to make sure you're on beats for any percussive instruments and complex for any vocals or melodic samples. Mistake number 4. I see this happen all the time when I'm working at universities and teaching online and speaking to my students in my online courses, which is not using the correct record. It's one of the most confusing things when you first start in Ableton. There's 2 records. You have this record and also you have this record. Essentially, they deal with recording into the different views in Ableton Live. So in Ableton Live, up here you have a logo. And you have something called arrangement view and session view. Now, if I wanted to record a clip in session view, I would have to arm the track first. Now I can press record here to record directly into the clip or record up here. Now what I see students doing is pressing this record, especially if you're coming from Logic or another DAW, that's the most logical thing. So I'd press record here. Start jamming away on my MIDI instrument. Oh yeah, this is sounding great. And then look, it's recorded into this view here, but it's not here. So what you would need to do if you want to record MIDI information in, you would either have to press record here, which then would record into the clip. If I just play some MIDI notes, see that's now recorded into the clip, and then I can loop them back. Now, if I wanted to overdub or add something into that, that's where I could use this session record. Now, if I press this, it goes red, and I can add on top. You see, I'm adding some MIDI notes on top there. So just to recap on that one, if you want to record a new clip in session view, arm the track, click here to record a new clip, or if you have an existing clip and you wish to add MIDI to it, simply turn on the session record and it will go there. To record into the other view, you press the arrangement record. This leads me on to my next mistake, which is not getting any audio out of arrangement view. You go into arrangement view after being in session view and it looks grayed out and dead. And you press play and you go, why can't I hear what's going on in here? That's this little button up here. You'll notice this pattern sometimes in Ableton Live. There's really important buttons like unmute button, but it's very, very tiny. But then boom, press that. And now that's activated this view and silence session view. It's there essentially so you don't get 2 pieces of music playing at the same time at different arrangements. It would sound like hell, basically. Now, next mistake is having too many plugins open and having massive CPU spikes up here. Now, sometimes the plugins and audio effects are essential for the sound and we would need to have them on, but having them on so many tracks and not having enough power in your computer can make your session glitch out and run slow and make it basically unusable. So there's a trick what we can do to save all this power, and that is to almost print each track. And this works really well with MIDI instruments as well. So I have a track here which has a bunch of audio effects on here. And what I can do is I can right click here and go freeze and flatten track. If I do that, it's now scanning through that audio track, printing the audio effects, and then it will just be one audio file. You won't have all the processing of those audio effects. And now it's done. So now can you see it's got rid of all those audio effects, and it's just the audio with those audio effects baked into it. Now this is super fun for MIDI instruments as well. So I have a MIDI instrument here with a bunch of effects and an instrument. Again, if I have a lot of these, can be quite CPU heavy. So I can just go right click on this track, freeze and flatten track, and it does the same thing. You see there, it's printed it to audio. It's got rid of the MIDI instrument and all the audio effects, saving precious CPU. Now you have to be sure that you've got the right sound for this. You have to commit to it, which I think is a good practice. Because if you're like me, I'm quite indecisive. I can change and tweak a song until I die. So I like committing to things so then I can't undo it. It's great for moving towards the mixing or mastering or just the completion stage with your track. It will also combat things like this, missing media files. Click here. This is an old project I'm opening up here, and there's stuff that's just missing from it. I think I've changed computer since I made this song, so there's plugins I haven't copied across, maybe stuff that I had in my user library, and I didn't do a collect all and save. Naughty Craig. The next mistake is I see most people when they first start out not utilizing the fact you can save default presets in all your audio effects and instruments within Ableton Live. If you're always opening up the same plugin and doing the same EQ cuts or the same sound on the synth, having to menu dive through all those presets, we can add it as the default preset to save hours and hours of all your precious time. So let's look at how we do that. So for example, here, if I go audio effects, go down to EQ8, drop it on this bass channel here. I'm going to put it into a low cut here, and I'm going to do that from about 35 onwards. I usually start with a low cut on most EQs and adjust it. And also I like it to be in oversampling mode. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to save as default preset. So I do that, bang. Never have to do that ever again. Obviously, you could probably have a few more of these set up. So for example, maybe have all of these turned on, maybe have a dip around about 2K. So if I put that to 2K there and put the Q a little bit tighter and then gain it down a little bit. Maybe it's just like a default. That could be something quite useful. And then, and then I try that again, save. Yes, I want to write over it. Now, if I drag that onto my kick channel, boom, exact same EQ preset. Pretty cool, right? Now try that with your synthesizers as well. For example, in Drift, there is a fantastic preset that I use all the time, which is dark poly pads. If I bring that up, fantastic. So with this, if you do save as default preset here, this is saving it on the instrument rack. So I want to do this on the instruments. So I have to go in, save as default preset. Now if I drag Drift across to this channel, should be fantastic. It's there. So just FYI, if you see the icon looks like this, see the Afterglow pad, it has like a little line. That means it's in an instrument rack. If I drag that across, now that would save, if I put this as the save default preset, that would be on the instrument rack. You would need to open it up with this icon here and go in and find the individual instrument. Just a little bit of a heads up with that one. Next one is a common beginner mistake. It's putting too many plugins on a track that don't necessarily need to be on every single track and could be utilizing something called send and returns. Now in Ableton Live, as a default, you have a return track that has reverb on it, and you have a return track that has delay on it. And this essentially means on each one of these tracks, I can turn this A dial and it will send it to reverb. So if I do this drum top here and I send it to reverb, so that's being sent to go through this channel. Now, what I see students do all the time when they first start out, even though that's there, don't really understand what that is, ignore it. And then they go, I want a reverb. And they'll go into the audio effects, they'll go down to their reverb and they'll drag it onto the drums. They'll drag it onto the kick. They'll drag it onto the bass, which is actually illegal. I'm only joking. Most people don't put reverb on the bass. It's like an unwritten producer law that you don't put reverb on the bass, but there you go. And you can see I've got 3 instances of that same plugin. Now, obviously that's not too bad if I've only got 3 tracks, but if you expand your track and you have like 20 like tracks within your song, it's going to start spiking in that CPU. Also, it's not going to sound great. Reverb is designed to sound like everything's in a space. So with that in mind, you want to think about with your tracks, if you want it to sound like it's in its own space, you'd put the reverb on its track. If you want your music to sound like it's unified and in the same space, you would put it on a send. So for example, if you would like, say you've got vocal stacks, this is a classic. A student will record, say 20 harmonies to layer them and put a reverb on each one of those stacks. I'm like, whoa, you don't want a choir, everyone to be in their own separate room. You would like the choir to be in one room. So if you would like something to sound like it's in its own space, put the reverb on the track. If you'd like it to sound like it's in a space together, put it on a send. Also save on your CPU. Another super simple one that I just don't see many beginner producers utilizing, which is adjusting your buffer size for your needs. Now, we mentioned this at the start. The first need would be to lower your latency. But if I open up settings by pressing Command, go to audio tab, buffer, I can increase the buffer size, which you'll probably think, why would you want to do that, Craig? That's crazy. That would be so much latency, you wouldn't be able to record into it. And you're correct. But there will be a point in your song where you'll finish recording and you'll probably want to start mixing and adding lots of plugins. If you have a low buffer size, this is putting more pressure on your computer and it can't process all those plugins very well. So what you need to do when you finish recording, you do not need to worry about latency. That's where you can max out your buffer size. That takes pressure off the computer and you can process all the plugins a lot more efficiently. So you're going to see a lot less audio dropouts, glitching, and your computer's going to run a lot smoother. So to summarize, when you're recording, have a low buffer size. When you're mixing, adding your plugins, have a high buffer size. Next mistake is a bit of a niche mistake, and that's if you're using Ableton Live in a live performance. You're going to want to drag in something called stems, which are the individual tracks of a song, and you're probably going to want them all to line up. Now, if you haven't adjusted any of Ableton Live settings, you might run into a problem. Check this out. So click on the first stem, then click on and hold Shift, and then click on the last one. Drag it in. Now this is almost like an extra mistake, a bonus, is most people would try dragging them in one by one, because when they try dragging them in all together, this happens. Ableton Live tries putting them all on one track. If you simply hold down Command on Mac or Control on Windows, Ableton Live will split them across tracks. Now it's important to keep it held down and take your finger off the mouse or the trackpad first. Then boom, they're in. So the common mistake is that there's a thing called auto warp long samples. Now this has actually been vastly improved over time, but it actually can warp some of the stems out of sync with each other. Now, thankfully it hasn't done it on this one, but you can see if I have one of these open, there's a warping thing going on there. If your stems are all in time, you do not need warping on. Warping is for putting it or stretching it in time. Usually when you're doing a live performance, you've got it to a point where you need it. Don't really need the warping. You would only need to turn it on if you want to change the tempo. Now, if you're not aware, warping does degrade the audio quality a little bit depending on what algorithm you've got. So it's just general practice to have it off. So what I like to do is before I drag it in, let's go settings, record, warp and launch, and turn off auto warp long samples. You would only really need this on if you're doing like DJ sets or you're sampling or remixing sort of things. So I'm just going to undo the drag in here. Let's copy that again. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing. Boom, hold down Command, finger off. Now everything is as it should sound when I exported it from my DAW. So summarize, make sure you've got auto warp long samples turned off if you're preparing a set for a live gig. If you're looking to do remixes and stretch, you want auto warp long samples on. Last but not least is MIDI controllers. So I see a lot of people when they first start out plug in their MIDI controller and just expect it all to work straight away, which yeah, it kind of does, but kind of doesn't. There's a few things you will just need to set up for it to work effectively. You'll first need to make sure your MIDI controller is plugged in, then go File, Settings, or Command, you want to go to Link Tempo MIDI. There's my MIDI controller, and you need to make sure for everything to effectively work that you have the track and remote selected. Track enables you to be able to play notes. Remote enables you to be able to MIDI map parameters to dials on your MIDI controller, which is super important. And then on the output, you have sync, and that enables Ableton to send out its tempo so you can go into your MIDI controller, go to the internal sync and change it to external, so all your arpeggiators and step sequences stay in time with Ableton Live. Now that's set up, if I was to create a new MIDI track here, press the record button, you'll see I have MIDI coming in. Now, if I wanted to control some of these parameters here, like the send and returns, it's not going to happen automatically. I would need to map it. Get to MIDI mapping, we press Command M or Control M on Windows. Everything that's gone purple is MIDI mappable. Because we got track turned on the input, we simply select that. And now if I go to phone camera, you'll see here, if I go and turn this dial, and then looking live, it's now mapped. Come out of MIDI map mode, turn the dial on the MIDI controller, and looking live, you see it's mapped to it. Now that will save in the Ableton Live session, but I will have to do it every time I create a new session. But those are the steps you would need to map a controller in Ableton Live. All right, now you know what mistakes to avoid. It's time to start making some music in Ableton Live. If you're new to Ableton Live or just want to build a solid foundation, check out the next video here where I walk through everything you need to get up and running and making music in Ableton Live in next to no time. Hope you found this helpful. Thanks, and see you in the next one.